welcome to my quick presentation of Planning Analytics with a focus on sales and revenue planning. So what we got on the screen at the moment is the landing portal for Planning Analytics. At the top we got a nice welcome message. You can customize this with your own logos. New users can play a video and see the capabilities of the platform. And then below there I have what we call My Applications. So Planning Analytics is designed to allow for budgeting, forecasting, and reporting across the enterprise. So our clients will have 10, 20, 30, 40 different applications. This screen will filter the applications based on the user's profile. So if I'm in operations planning, I'll see operations planning. If I'm in workforce planning, I'll see workforce planning, and so forth. So what we're going to look at today is an application at the bottom here called Guided Planning, where we'll do some of our revenue planning. So Guided Planning is an example of a bottom-up planning solution where we're going to look at infusing workflow and looking at some of our AI capabilities as well. So on the left here, I've got the name, what we call the navigation pane. I've got the name of the application, a brief description of what the application is. And then what we can do is break up the planning process into individual tasks and guide the user through their planning process. So each task can have a different start and end date, and each task will have one or more assets to assign to it. So for example, revenue has an asset called planning assigned to it, which is loaded on the right. But if I jump over here to CapEx, it will load into my capital asset on the right, where I can start adding my new assets and calculate depreciation and so forth. Once I've completed the task, the user can hit the submit button here. Numbers tell half the story, but they can complete the story or narrative with some rich text in here. In this case, I can say I've updated my revenue numbers in line with CPI, inflation, or certain promotions I'm running, and I can upload any supporting documentation as well. And then once I hit submit, depending on how we structured the workflow, an email might get sent to my first line manager or my regional manager saying Kev's updated his revenue numbers. Please click on the on this link to approve or reject his submission. So what we'll do is we'll update our revenue numbers. So I'll just minimize this pane here so we can see our planning asset a bit better. So the first screen we land on here is around scorecards and metrics. So everything I'm showing you today is highly customizable. So the layout of the screens, how many tabs you want, color templates we can bring in, so we can set the visualizations up based off your colors and so forth. So here we've got effectively a summarized P&L view of the world. What we're trying to do is give the user a bit of a sense on this tab of the overall performance of the organization before we get into the demand planning tab. So here I've got a summarized P&L view. Obviously users can drill up and drill down on this particular hierarchy, and then we can look at actuals, budget, variance percent, status. How do our actuals and budgets compare? On the far right here I've got what we call our list filter. So we have a number of filtering styles depending on the valuable real estate and the user behavior we're trying to enforce. But here I can look at total company or go down to a region level, but we can filter on cost center, department, products, and so forth as well. Down at the bottom here we've got some out-of-the-box visualizations. So we've got about 30 visualizations out of the box at the moment, and we're constantly adding to that visualization library. So Workspace is on what we call a continuous delivery lifecycle. So every month we're bringing out new visualizations and new capabilities, making sure our customers are always up to date from a look and feel perspective. The first visualization we've got here is what we call a network diagram. The intent of this visualization is to give the user a bit of a sense of the relationships within their data. So this demo is based off an IT manufacturer like Apple. So in the middle I've got the product categories, so tablets, phones, and PCs. On the outside I've got the regions that I'm selling through, and we're looking at revenue numbers. So the darker the gray line, the more revenue I'm selling of that product category through that particular region. Next to that I've got a bubble chart where I've got my products as bubbles based on units or volume, and then revenue across the bottom. So I can see what my high volume selling products are, which are my 3G smartphones. But our 4G smartphones are our biggest revenue earners, lower volume, better margins, and so forth. Obviously, we can drill in and interact with these visualizations and go down to individual SKU levels as well. Next to that, I've got what we call Mapbox integration. So if we can represent, let me expand it so you can see a bit better. But if we can represent your data geographically, it just helps the users understand a bit better what's going on. So here we're at a country level, so I can see Germany, France are doing quite well. Spain and Portugal need a bit more assistance. We can go down to a street level or an address level within Planning Analytics. So one of our clients has got 961 stores across Australia. So we've got an Australian view, and we can see how each of the states are performing, and then we can go all the way down to a city level and see each store and see how they are performing in relation to each other. All right, on the next tab, we on our demand tabs, which is where we can start updating our demand plan. Here we got a couple of different filter styles. So the first one here is what we call a drop-down filter. So I got my product dimension, so I can either run my demand plan at my product or total product level, or at a product category like phones, or I can go down to an individual product level or SKU level and run a demand plan there. Across the top, I can look at either total company, which what we call this our slider bar, or slider bar filter. So here I've got total company, go down to a state level, or go down to a Sydney, a city level like Sydney. So what we'll do now is we'll update our demand plan for Sydney. And what we can do as well is the user can come in here and just manually update their demand plan, or what they can do is create multiple personalized scenarios of this data, where they can do what if analysis or sensitivity analysis, make some assumptions, some changes, see the impacts, and when they're happy they can commit it back to the official demand plan. So to do that, they can come up to the top here and just click on the spade icon and go create sandbox. I'm just going to call it, let's just call it what if, and then go create. Oops, sorry, that did not hit create. Let's do what if and do create. So this will create me a what we call a sandbox called what if, and this version is only visible to myself. There's no admin required or IT required in doing this. The end user can just go and create as their own sandboxes. So what we're going to do is update our demand plan. First, I'm going to show you some of the write back capabilities, and then we're going to look at some of the AI predictive forecasting capabilities that we have in the platform as well. So a couple of things that users can do in here to help them update their plans quickly are things like breakbacks and spreads. So effectively I can change a whole lot of sales very, very quickly. So what I want to do is I want to do a breakback on October. I want to change the whole of October for my 3 different channels. So I'm looking at 3 different channels on the table here, and I'm at a total product level here as well. So what I want to do is increase it the whole month by 10% proportionally to what's currently there, all the way down to an individual SKU level. So I can come in here and say, type in I and C. This will increase the whole of October by 10%, all the way down to an individual SKU level. So if I drill all the way down to an individual SKU, you'll see those numbers will filter all the way down to this particular level. So we call that a breakback or a spread. The other thing we can do with these breakbacks and spreads is apply holds. So I may want to change everything in October, but I want to keep stores where they are. So I can right click on stores and I can go and put a hold there. So when I make a change, if I come at the highest level, let me make it a real number this time. Let me put 8K in there. That change will only get applied to online and wholesales and keep stores where they are. So it's not an all or nothing thing. I can actually use these holds to kind of say, keep these either product categories or these particular channels freeze them at that point. And the other thing we can do as well, if I release this hold, is I can come at the highest level and put a hold at the total channel level. And then I can play around with the numbers underneath total channel. So it won't exceed or go below 8,000. It will just change the other channels proportionally. So for example, if I go and change stores, let me make it 1K. So it's going to increase the 1K. It's then going to reduce online and wholesale proportionally to what's currently there. Obviously there'll be some cannibalization as I sell more in stores. My sales in online and wholesale may decline and have some cannibalization. So we can use those holds to kind of do that kind of sensitivity analysis and be quite sophisticated with that. And then what I can do is, let me release all holds. We've added a number of shortcut keys to help the users update their plans quickly and effectively. So we can do things like I want to increase March For wholesale, I want to increase it to 2,500 units for every month for the remainder of the year. So I can just do 2,500 to the right. This is going to update 10 months down to 100 products, so around about 1,000 cells in less than a second. The other thing we can do as well is we've noticed users would use a calculator or a spreadsheet to work out the value to put back into Planning Analytics. So what we allow users to do now is use formulas to update the cells. So for example, in February for wholesale, I want to sell 200 units for every day in February, so 200 times 28. The result of that formula will get written back to that cell. Obviously, we can do plus, minus, divide, times, and so forth. Or I can get a bit more sophisticated and go, I want to start at 2,100 in January, and I want to grow by 10% per month. So I can just type in 2,100, grow by 10, and that will effectively do a straight line from January with a 10% month-on-month increase. And we can get a bit more sophisticated, and I can apply things like 4, 5 weeks for expenses and so forth, and we can profile your data based off a number of different profiles. So the other thing we can do as well is I can use historical data to predict what my demand plan is going to look like. So on the screen here, I've got some historical data for 2022, 23, and 24. And what I'm going to do is to run a predictive forecast, I highlight which lines I want to run a predictive forecast for. I actually want to run it for all 3 channels, so I'll highlight all 3. Come to the top right, and then click on my forecast icon. The user gets presented with 2 forecast or predictive forecasting methods, so univariate and multivariate. I'll show you univariate to start off with, and then we'll jump into multivariate in a couple of minutes. So here it loads on the right, the univariate forecast wizard. Here I can tell it what I want to forecast from and to. So I actually want to forecast from January 25 out to December 2025. On the advanced tab, I can deselect certain historical time periods. So I may want to remove COVID years from my my prediction. And then I can also set up acceptable ranges. So there's only so much we can manufacture in a month. There's, you know, we've got constraints around raw materials, production lines, and so forth. So we can set those acceptable ranges in here, so the prediction engine will not go above or below these maximum minimum levels that we set here. When I go to the bottom and hit preview, what the system is going to do is run 9 exponential smoothing algorithms across each of the different channels. It's going to identify the seasonality and trend in each of the channels and picks the most appropriate algorithm out of the 9 to create me a demand plan. So at the moment on the screen, we're looking at stores, but I've got all 3 channels selected here that we selected on the previous screen. But for stores, the fixed line here is my actuals. The dashed line is my predicted demand. And then the shaded area is my confidence range. So how confident is the system in its prediction? So predictive forecasting isn't magic fairy dust. It's not always going to give you 100% accurate results all the time. It's got a lot to do with the quality of the data, granularity of the data, and so forth. So it's very important that we inform the end users, can I trust these numbers, or should I use my own business insights in forecasting these numbers out? On the statistical detail tab, this tab is designed to give the user a bit more details or explainability into how these numbers were generated to help with the trustworthiness of these numbers. So in here we go into the predictive accuracy, which model was selected, so exponential smoothing, the trend that was detected was additive, the seasonality was additive, so the specific model that it selected was the Holt Winters method. And on the left here I've got all the measures and parameters that we use to derive this demand plan. Now this is quite, it gets quite technical here from a data science point of view. So what we've done is we're running Gen AI across this to give a more business-friendly explanation of how these numbers are being generated, and that's been done over here in the forecast summary. So it goes into a bit more, business-friendly explanation. So, it talks about the Holt Winters model. It tells the user what it's effectively, good for capturing underlying patterns in data. And it looks at the, accuracy, what the mappy's doing, and so forth, to give the user a bit of a more business-friendly explanation of what's going on. If we jump to online, the other thing the system will automatically do as well, it will detect any outliers in your historical data. So for online, for December, we can see there's an outlier here indicated by this red square. And what we can do is get the system to smooth out that outlier to give us a far more accurate prediction moving forward. So I can come up to the top right here and I can adjust it. And what the system is going to do is it's going to smooth it out, basically moves this blue dot down to this green dot. This is the pattern expected to see in my historical data. And then now we can see that the confidence band is really narrow. So it's improving our forecast accuracy by smoothing that out. So once I'm happy with these changes, I can come out of this, just hit forecast. It'll take those preview numbers and seed that into my demand plan for 2025. So the goal here is to improve forecast accuracy and the speed that it takes the users to do their forecasts. So once the numbers are in here, I can then augment these numbers. So for example, in January for wholesale, it's predicting that we're going to sell 2,118 units. I expect to sell 3,000 units because I'm running a campaign in that month. So I can go in there and overwrite those numbers. So as things change over time, I can go and augment these numbers. So this is univariate. So let's have a look at multivariate. I've got a different example for multivariate. So univariate is just looking at one variant, which is time, looking at seasonality and trend over time. But there may be other factors that are going to influence your demand plan. And so what we can use is these factors to produce a far more accurate prediction. So in this case here, I've got a couple of different factors that may influence our prediction. So here I've got how many business days there are in the month. I've got consumer spending, or how much disposable income do our customers have. This be an all-time low in Australia at the moment with the cost of living crisis, although it is improving with lower interest rates and so forth. We can bring in inflation rates. I can bring in unemployment figures. I can bring in population growth, demographics, weather data, precipitation, temperature, commodity prices, different factors that may influence your predictions depending on your industry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a multivariant prediction on our 5G 32 gigabyte phone here, and I'll show you how it's slightly different from a univariant. So when I click up here, I'll select multivariant. It loads the multivariant forecast on the right there. I still tell it when I want to forecast from, so January 2025 to December. And then down here at the bottom, I got a new section where I can point to these different variables that I want to include in my prediction. So here I've got two set up already. So I'm pointing to consumer spending, and I'm looking at unemployment. And the user can go in here and modify that and look at different factors, be it business days and so forth. So if I come out of this and I go to preview, preview. So in here, I'll show you what does slightly different. If I go to the statistical detail tab, there's a new section on the right here called relative contribution. And this is going to tell the user, out of the variables or factors they've selected, which ones are actually contributing to the predictive strength. So the consumer spending or disposable income has a low contribution to the predictive strength or the demand for this particular product. So less at 5%, 4.9, while unemployment has a strong contribution to the predictive strength for this particular product at 95%. So effectively, if the person's employed and they got money, they're going to purchase this product. If they're unemployed and they don't have money, then they're not going to purchase this product. It doesn't matter how much disposable income the client has. It doesn't influence the demand for this particular product. So it's not like a luxury item like a Louis Vuitton bag. What we've clicked on is more like an essentials item like milk, bread, butter, and so forth. So the system will automatically tell the users which factors are actually influencing the predictive strength for this particular product, and so they can go out and swap consumer spending for maybe inflation rates and so forth to give a far more accurate prediction moving forward. Okay, hopefully this gives you a bit of a sense of what we can do within Planning Analytics. It is a highly flexible tool, we can tweak it to your particular needs. We can bring in your factors and how you want to do sales and revenue forecasting. But hopefully in this short demonstration, it's giving you a bit of a sense of what we can do, what the look and feel is like, what the user experience will be like within the platform. But be rest assured we can tweak it to meet 100% of your business requirements. So thank you for your time.